Hello, welcome back to STEM Explained. I'm Rushika Subhuti, and today I'm really excited to be joining by Miss Millie Abraha. She is a biomedical engineer whose journey started all the way in Ethiopia, later bringing her to the US to pursue studies in physics and biology before moving into biomedical engineering. She has worked in research at the Duke Human Vaccine Institute and now works in medical device development, where she combines her technical expertise with hands-on innovation. Today we'll be talking about her path into biomedical engineering, her experiences in both research and industry, and her advice for students who are curious about exploring STEM careers. I can't wait to get started. Could you give a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Millie Abraha. Uh, I'm an international student that came to the US when I was like 17. I'm originally from Ethiopia. And if you're not familiar, it's an East African country. So I grew up again with very limited, you know, work experience coming from Ethiopia. And I think largely that's due to like limited resources in the area, which is partly why I wanted to come to the US to pursue a career in like engineering generally. I was definitely interested in math, physics. I was like one of those kids who loved problem solving. And I also had a very science driven kind of upbringing. Everybody around me was like, studying a lot of science fields. So I think it was definitely an exciting thing for me. But I think the lack of real world experience was definitely a huge inhibitor, I guess, coming from Ethiopia, which is kind of why I came to the US. And then I studied my undergraduate degree at a small college called Truman State University in Missouri. I finished my undergrad with a physics major and a biology minor. So still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I did a bunch of research in different like applied physics areas, which sort of shaped my career pathway in a way. And then after undergrad, I also worked in vaccine research at the Duke Human Vaccine Institute, which was also another, applications of biophysics in vaccine research. And then the biggest jump was actually going from there to biomedical engineering, which is something I decided to do in undergraduate, on my graduate program. And that's when I made a huge shift in my career and started to do more hands-on engineering work. And it's been the best decision ever. I love the work that I do right now. So yeah. So
Thank you so much. I really want to get into biomedical engineering, so it was really cool to see how you figured that out while studying and doing like a physics major and a biology minor. That's really cool.
yeah. And it was partly because they didn't have, I have actually, I was interested in biomedical engineering even as an undergrad, but they didn't have the program within the school, and I've attempted to transfer, but it was just much more complicated at that stage because I was getting close to my junior year. So I decided to just continue, finish the program, and then I definitely wanted to do a master's or a PhD in biomedical engineering, but I ended up doing just a master's. Um, Partly that's because I had enough research experience to realize that maybe research isn't really what I'm interested in. I actually liked, being able to work with people. I liked more than like lab work. I really enjoyed like the um, interactive part of engineering where you're building stuff, but also connecting with the customer that you're working with, collaborating with different, cross-functional teams, which is what we do in my current job. And I think that was very critical in my decision. And sometimes, you know, some of these work experiences can help you realize what you actually don't want to do as opposed to like what you want to do. And that was kind of my experience for the most part.
So I think you mentioned it just now, but you worked at the Duke Health Institute.
Human Vaccine Institute, yes.
Okay, sorry, the Duke
No.
Human Vaccine Institute. And I was just really curious because when I was looking at what you did translational research. So could you explain what that is and how that differs from like normal research, I guess?
Yeah, so I think like basic research, the difference between a basic research and translational, you're actually trying to use the research to either it's applicable, whether it's clinical trials, you're doing some study to actually treat something or to help patients directly, versus basic research, it's to expand your understanding in a specific area. You may not necessarily have a clear application in real life for those research, or at least you don't have it at that point. It's still early stages before you get to like actual applications in medicine. And I think a lot of the things that we were doing was preclinical and clinical studies. We were doing some animal studies, but also like human clinical trials. Basically looking at different vaccine candidates, and particularly I was working with different, biosensing technologies, where we were looking at different biomolecular interactions to understand, you know, how the mechanism of action for different, vaccines or antibody treatments. And yeah, I think without getting into a lot of detail, uh, yes, it was definitely different than the basic research, the type of research that I did in undergrad, which was more, it's also less time sensitive. So like, I know there's a significant difference in terms of the pace of the research. With the translational research, there's definitely, a target date and deadlines that always come up, and you always have to meet those, um, yeah, expected timelines.
Oh, so I mean, I guess from what I understood, translational research is like figuring out how we can use the research to create like a solution or a product.
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Translational, like
Yeah.
translating research.
Exactly. More, more applicable, I guess.
Yeah. Um, so I was just wondering, since you've done, I'm assuming like both undergrad research in undergraduate and in your jobs and stuff. So I'm assuming sometimes that research doesn't go the way you expect it to. So could you give an example of when that happened and, what you learned from it and like the
Yeah.
experience behind that, I guess?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So I'm gonna give you an example of like my work at DHVI. A lot of times with a research, you don't, especially with clinical research, and specifically in the field of immunology, we're looking at different pathogens, and a lot of times we develop an antibody or a vaccine, and to target those pathogens. And the pathogens, you might have been aware already with COVID and all these other infectious disease out there, there's a lot of mutation, and there's so many factors that influence the results. And so we have all these samples, and we spend so much time analyzing, and characterizing all these different vaccine candidates. And then, the results are not always as clean as you would expect it to be. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, basic research. There's just a lot more confounding factors. And sometimes it might feel a bit discouraging. You spend so much time, and then you're working towards some endpoint, but then that becomes inconclusive. A lot of times there were so many research that were just at the end of it, at the end of the day, you do the data analysis and the results are not very conclusive, so it doesn't give you any sort of direction. So it just leads to more research. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, is with research, it's definitely time consuming, and you need to be patient, and you really have to enjoy the journey, the process. And then, for a lot of people, research is, something that they're passionate about. For me, I think I like being hands-on. I like seeing the result of my work. And I think that's also why I was just like, okay, I think I like doing something that where I can see the results soon. as opposed to like clinical research. And I think it's also like not being able to connect with the customer, or with when you're working in a research, it's a very small niche, and it, you're being sort of a technical expert in one thing, but it's also very limiting. It doesn't really, you don't get to interact with a lot of different teams in that sense. So I think being able to do something that has direct clinical application is definitely something that I favored at that time. That's why I kind of switched to medical device development.
Um, just on a personal note, I never realized that research could be because I always thought research was exciting, and then now hearing your perspective, I'm like, oh, that actually makes sense. I want to be able to talk to people and
Yeah.
see how the results affected them. So
Yeah. And again, I
yeah.
don't want, yeah, I don't want this to kind of, sway your decision in terms of your career, because this is just my experience. And again, there's so many different, even there's still research in the field that I'm in right now, clinical research, which is basically we're still doing like all the devices that we're developing. We are taking them into clinical, trials, and we're actually putting them in, devices, putting them in patients, seeing the outcome. There's always going to be research in every field, so it's really about, is this something you're passionate about? Do you like building stuff, or do you like doing research, um, or run clinical studies with already developed product? You know what I mean?
Hmm. So
I
since
hope
you
that's
mentioned,
helpful.
huh?
I hope that's helpful and I didn't confuse you.
No, no, no.
Okay.
I just like learning new perspectives because I've heard a lot
Mhm.
about like the normal research and development stuff, but I haven't really heard about clinical research. So it's cool to get like a new
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah.
And I was wondering, what would like a normal day at your job look like since you do work in clinical research? So
Oh,
what
you
does a
mean right
normal day?
now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not on the clinical research side of things. I'm more on the device development. So I'm part of new product development. So I'm a systems engineer, as I'm pretty sure you're aware of. So I think systems engineer, it's broader and all encompassing in a way. When you think about device development, we're in charge of the design and development of a product, but also how it integrates with other components of this overall system. So, like I think with our device, for instance, we're developing peripheral nerve stimulation system. It's not just one piece of a device. There are multiple components that have to work together, and I think you have a broader view of how all these different parts need to be assembled, how they need to interact and work with each other, but also the customer interface as well. If it's like a patient or a physician using the device, understanding all the potential ways the device could fail, coming up with a risk mitigation plan. Basically, you're overseeing the all the different aspects of the product development throughout the life cycle of the product. So um, for me, my day to day, I think most of my time is spent actually communicating with multiple partners, because we don't do all the engineering work in house. We outsource some of those, very specific and very, you know, detailed kind of engineering work. And then I am pretty much the technical lead on some of these projects, where I'm communicating technical details to all the different cross-functional team internally. And then so sort of a liaison for a lot of these projects. So I spend a lot of my time actually meeting with all these different vendors, and communicating with the internal team and coming up with a plan. A lot of project management is also in there, because it's still relatively a smaller company. It's not a big, well established company. So we do wear multiple hats in our role, and I think that's what I like about this job as well. I get to do a lot more than just being a technical person. And it gives you a lot more experience in different parts of medical device development.
So in your job, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of different responsibilities you have in your job. So what are some skills that you use, like general skills, I guess, and but also like technical skills?
Okay. So I think technical skills, obviously, I do a lot of mechanical designs. So I do modeling. I use SolidWorks. SolidWorks is, I don't know if you're familiar with. That's probably a significant portion of my work. Is like I do a lot of design work, um, and then there's also the uh, just understand. There's still research even within the work that I do, understanding what's the state of the art, like where is the technology going, what are the competitors in the market. All of these things are still part of my work. And then there is intellectual property as well, just coming up with intellectual, so it's basically patent applications. We do have patent applications for different devices that we're developing, so making sure that there's a new technology that we're um, you know that we're properly documenting it and making sure that we're getting the protection needed for any new innovations. But generally there's also the product development. I think, like I've mentioned, I think this probably falls under soft skills, but being able to communicate something that's very technical to non-technical team members. Sometimes I get wrapped up in my own world, and I'm just I love engineering and I love to explain things as an engineer. Learning how to adapt to your audience and making sure that those people that may not have similar backgrounds as you do can understand what you're saying, and you know can come to terms with the project, with the work that you're doing. So
Hmm.
that's an important thing. Communication is also another critical thing, because that's actually a big part of the work that I do, is just meeting up with a lot of internal and external partners and being able, you know, to clearly and concisely communicate. And I think as an engineer, that's not something that, or as a technical person, I don't think I've had that skill coming into this job, but this job has definitely been helpful in giving me that exposure and allowing me to um, get a lot of experience.
Hmm. That's pretty cool. I mean, um, translating stuff from the more technical terms to like normal terms for normal people. I mean, I personally don't have a problem with that, but I'm assuming that can be ch quite challenging at times, especially when
Yeah.
you're doing your job.
Yeah, yeah. And there are certain topics that, that could be very complicated to explain to a layperson and still get you know, without the message getting lost in translation, you know what I mean? Making sure that they still understand the complexity of what you're doing, but at the same time, helping them, you got to breach that gap and, be able to help them understand what you're doing,
Hmm.
at least
Yeah,
enough
that makes sense.
to get their buy-in, or you know
Hmm.
to push the project forward. So
That makes sense. So I mean, I guess going off from your like the more businessy side of your job, I noticed that you did some like entrepreneur programs in it, uh, and you developed like medical devices. So how was your experience that in that?
yeah, so that was part of my graduate program. So before coming into this job, the way the grad school was structured. So I went to NC State and UNC joint biomedical engineering program. It's an accelerated 1 year program, and I chose that program specifically because it's structured as sort of a hands-on project or practicum based um, you know coursework. So I think we spent a lot of our time actually doing things instead of sitting in class and, listening to lectures, which is a big factor for me to choose that program, especially coming out of a very lecture focused undergraduate degree. So I needed something that's hands on, especially when I'm switching a career. You know what I mean? I'm going from research to, medical device. So I needed that experience, and I think that program gave it to me. And I think the way it's also structured is to kind of prepare the students to, potentially start their own company by the end of the program. So we actually start with a clinical immersion phase, which is the whole summer. We go into the hospitals, we shadow physicians, all kinds of clinicians, and then to identify any unmet healthcare needs. So we actually go in just observing how they do things and asking them questions, interviewing so many different nurses and other practitioners to understand what the unmet need is in their field. And then we take all of that stuff, distill the ones that we think are going to, you know, uh, going to have a larger impact, and also that we've, based on the interviews, that seems to be a bigger problem in the hospital. And then we translate that into product requirements. And I think that's where, taking unmet need and making a product out of it, that's the biggest portion of the project, because that's where a lot of, engineers struggle. It's just that they are good at developing a product, not a product, a technology, but without understanding what the actual need is, it's not a product. Without the need, without the customer interaction, and you're not getting any sort of feedback on whatever technology that you're developing, you really don't have anything. So I think understanding clearly and defining what the user need is very essential to the product development stage. And it's also kind of an iterative process. It's not just a one time you ask and then you start making product and then launch your product. You have to continuously take the prototypes, whatever concepts that you're developing, getting customer feedback is very essential.
So I really like I'm interested in like the new technologies in biomedical devices, and I kind of do want to just try my hand at like doing something like that, maybe now or maybe in the future. So what
Mm.
are some of your suggestions in, you know, trying to get into like the innovation side of biomedical engineering?
That's a really good question. I think starting with early internship programs, I always recommend it to even just family and even friends that are still sort of in the early stages of their career. I think that's the one thing that I wish I had explored even more when I was in college. I think, you know, um, it took me so long to get to where I am, and I'm pretty sure like if I had a lot more experience, even if it's just a short hands-on experience, I think that would be a great way to get exposure to all the different fields, to understand what you like and what you're passionate about early on. So I think there are, I'm pretty sure, a lot of opportunities for internship. And I think, especially if you're more interested in you know the industry path versus like a research path, starting early, getting your hands in there as opposed to like spending a lot of time just doing the research, is important. Getting that industry experience, building your connection. I think being very active on LinkedIn. There are a lot of people, sometimes just even like informational interviews. I think for me, after grad school, even before starting my first job here, I was just informational interviews were so useful to kind of help me connect and find my next opportunity. So I think that's something I highly recommend um, at, at an early stage. I think, did I lose you? Sorry, I want to make sure.
Oh no, yeah, my network connection just kind of fizzled out. So I was like, no, what's
Oh, okay.
happening? It was oh great.
Yeah. I think I
Um,
can hear you now. You're good.
yeah. It was raining a while before, so it's just my network's been laggy today.
Yeah, it's been raining for the past couple of days too here. So you're in North Carolina,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Morrisville.
Mooresville, okay. I'm in Durham.
Um, Wait, okay. I had one question in my mind. So, like a lot of times, me personally, I kind of lose interest in like topics in general. So, what keeps you interested in STEM fields and your job in general?
I would say challenges, and sometimes, you know, the more when there are challenges, it seems a bit. You might feel a bit resistance to, as any human being. I think we're a little bit more resistant at first, but I think it's the only way you can grow. And it's also what keeps you excited. I think that when you solve a problem and you're looking forward to your next challenge, it gets more exciting. I think for me, it's whenever I feel like, okay, I'm doing the same thing, repetition is definitely not exciting for me. So I like to have something different, a unique challenge that I can tackle, and that's what keeps me excited. And sometimes it's also up to you to figure out, is this good enough? Like I think when you're up for another challenge, it's always good to like be proactive and ask for the thing that you're interested in, whatever that is. You know what I mean? Um, Proactively reaching out and trying to identify um, areas where you can actually make meaningful impact within the company that you work in. So I think that's something that I would say keeps me excited.
Um,
I hope
wow,
that's
okay,
helpful.
challenges.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the fact sometimes I'm like, I have to solve this problem now. Like the
Right.
satisfaction you feel. Yeah.
It is.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'm always like, I feel very focused when I'm doing something, when I feel like there isn't enough to do or it's just getting repetitive, I get easily distracted. And I think that that's what it means sometimes to like a little, little challenge, a little pressure is kind of helpful to keep you, moving. Yeah.
hmm. So to finish the interview, what's one piece of advice you'd give to your future self if you could go back in time?
Wait, to my future. Okay. If I could go back in time.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to understand. Wait, sorry, you said to my
No, I
past
think I
self?
misspoke. No,
Was it to
yeah,
my
past
okay, to my
my
young
past
self?
self.
Okay. Okay, I want to make sure. I was like, wait, did I get it wrong? Okay. To my younger self, I think I would say um, explore mentorship and seek help when needed. And I think as an undergrad, I was new to this country. I was new to the system completely, and I don't think I've reached out as much, and I don't think I've built enough network. And I think it was partly because of the location. The program wasn't really suited for the engineering career that I wanted. But even then, I think I think it's so critical in your life to find the mentorship, especially like for the people that are senior that are already in the industry that you want to join. It's important that you start reaching out early and getting their perspective. There's so many things that I could have done better had I, you know, had I had like a better guidance and a little bit more perspective on the different career paths. And especially nowadays with LinkedIn, everything is just right there in front of you. It's just so much easier to reach out to people. Um, and that's probably the biggest advice I give myself. Um, Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you
You're
so much for your
welcome.
insights.
Yeah, I hope this was helpful. And yeah, if you have any more questions and would like to connect, I am open to that. And, I really enjoyed talking to you.
I definitely probably will have more questions. So
Yeah, definitely, especially about, college and stuff. If you're looking into specific programs, um,
yeah,
feel free to use me as your resource. All
thank you
right.
so much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.